Alright, and we're off. This is the last one. I pulled all the pegs off, and at the end all I did was make a slip knot with the very last loop in order to have it come off of the loom entirely. So now we have a scarf that is 35 inches long. I'll fold it and fold it and fold it, that way you can see. It is 35 inches long. Now what you're going to do with this scarf is you're going to lay it out. It's kind of hard to see because of the size of it. And you're going to pull this side down. It's just going to crease. I'll move the camera so you can see. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side, pulling this one down over top of this one, which is going to give you a shape like this. Now you're going to have to try and line up this edge the best you can, but we're going to stitch it anyway, so it won't really matter because we can move it as we go. So you're going to need your needle and some yarn to stitch it. Now since I'm going to show you a black edge, I'm going to use a size 5 black yarn. This is Loops and Threads Charisma black yarn. You don't have to use this, it's just what I'm using to show you. Go ahead and thread your needle, which seems to be the hardest part for me because I have big fingers. One of the disadvantages of being a guy in the crafting world. So the first thing that I do is I always start with the corner because I want the corners to line up. So I start with the corner, I make my, push it all the way through both sides, see, both. It's going to make it thick on the chest piece, especially with this yarn because this yarn is a super bulky yarn, but it's really cold here in New Jersey in the wintertime, so it works for me. A lot of times I use size 5 yarn, which doesn't thicken up quite as much. So I go through both pieces, pull it through, get enough yarn to where I'll be able to stitch all the way up this side right here. So I'm going to go all the way to where this corner meets the rest of the scarf, and I'm just going to do a running stitch. Since I went down, now I'm just going to go up, pull it through. Pull it nice and tight. Keeping my seams together. And I'm trying to stay as close to the edge as possible. That way you just don't have black running through up here or something like that. A lot of times what you can do is you can take the same yarn that you were using to make the cowl and stitch it going up, and you'll never even notice, even if it does have a color change. Like, you'll never notice a gray spot here and a blue spot here. You'll never notice that. But since I'm going to do an edge in black, I'm going to go ahead and show you with black yarn, and plus it's a lot easier to see on this blue. So I'm just going to run that stitch all the way up, alternating top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, keeping the stitches close. That way, even if you were to look upon close inspection, it's going to be difficult to see that stitch. I'm using black, that way you can see them. I mean, you can, like I said, you can go with the same color that you made the cowl with. That's not a big deal. I'm just doing this so you can actually see it. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch all the way up here, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm back. I ran my stitch all the way up this side, and as you can see, I'm in the very corner of where this piece meets this piece. Now I've left this loop here. I haven't pulled this all the way through. I'm going to go down inside both pieces. I'm going to put the needle inside of the loop and then pull it, and it's going to create a slip knot. on my stitching. Creates a slip knot. That way it doesn't go anywhere. Now, the next thing that I do is, we have this side done, we'll do the other side in a minute, is line up the edges, fold the neckline, or what will be the neckline, down. Forgive my tattoos, I have a whole bunch. Alright, so this is going to be the neckline of the overall piece as it sits on the person. Now what I like to do is, after I've made my slip knot, go ahead and bring my stitching back up through the cowl, grabbing both pieces, and then go up the edge a little bit and then sew this way to keep that neckline kind of in place. That way when the person wearing it washes it or takes it off and they don't adjust the neckline, they know where it's supposed to fold. It'll be easier for them. I don't sew the whole neckline down, because if you're going to give this piece to somebody, you want them to be able to determine where it is comfortable for them, not where it's comfortable for you. However, if you're making this and you're keeping it because you like it and you want one, then find out where it's comfortable for you and just sew the whole neckline down if that's what you would like. So I went ahead and made a few stitches so to keep that shape more so than not. So the same thing down inside. Came out. Put that back in there. I'll come back up. This is going to be my last one. I'm going to leave that loop to make my ending slip knot. Push down inside of the cowl. Flip it up so you can see. Here's my loop. Just going to thread the needle inside of the loop, pulling it nice and tight, which creates that slip knot. Now with the rest of this yarn that's on this needle, I'm just going to weave it into the back, especially through the black areas, just to kind of tie it off and hide the rest of the yarn. But I'll do that later. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this side down. I'm going to use the exact same technique that I was using to sew the other side. I'm just moving from this corner that I've already sewed down up this way. The important thing is, see how these are not lined up? The important thing is to line these up before you start sewing, and then make sure that as you continue sewing that they are still lined up, because if they become messed up, then you sew it down, you're going to have to take all that stitching out in order to make sure that it is correct. So I went ahead and took the other piece of my yarn that is connected to this corner. I have it here, and I'm going to do a running stitch along this edge as well. If you have a different sewing stitch that you use, then by all means do that. The U.S. military didn't teach me a whole lot of sewing techniques, but this is the one that they showed me. So this is the one that I use. I know there's a lot of other sewing techniques out there to get this done. So I'm going to go ahead and sew up to here. Sew up to the where this piece meets this piece, and then we'll get right back at it. Alright, so I'm back. This is going to be my last stitch. I'm pulling it up through. I have a lot of yarn attached to this. I'm going to be leaving that loop. going back down inside, making sure that I go behind the stitch, that way I can pull the needle through the loop like that, and then making that slip knot eventually. Making that slip knot just like that. And then I go in and I turn it over and weave the ends in and then cut the remainder of the yarn. But I'll do that later. So this is what we have. It's kind of hard to see from that angle. I'll go ahead and adjust this camera. This is what we have. Now this is beautiful in itself. I mean, you could stop right here, go ahead and hide these ends and wear it like that. But I'm going to show you two different techniques, not one, but two different techniques on how to do an edge. So first I'm going to show you the tassels for the edge, and then I'm going to show you a crocheted edge. So the tassels are really easy. Move that off to the side. This is the edge. Here's the corner. And this is the first edge. You're going to take whatever yarn color that you're going to use for the tassels, like black for instance. You're going to need something to measure with. You're going to need 10 inches, give or take, more or less. At least 10 inches. Go ahead and cut that at 10. Two strands per. So you're going to take these two strands, make sure that they're about equal. Now what I do is I use a crochet hook. I have this thing on it because my hands are really big. I find the chain. The edge of it will have a chain look to where one loops around another and just continues that. That's the chain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the chain here. I'm going to start here in the corner. This is the very corner, and this is the very first chain. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my crochet hook, grabbing just the chain. So I don't have anything on it. I'm just pushed through the top piece, not all four, because here's the bottom. So I'm through that very first chain. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my yarn that I've cut, I'm going to grab it with the crochet hook and pull it through. I'll pull it through, that makes a loop here and then ends here, and then I just pull this yarn through this loop and pull it tight. That makes your tassels or your fringe, and I do that in every single chain all the way around. I'm not going to sit here and show you every single chain all the way around. You get the general idea. So we're going to move on to the crocheted edge.